The station went into emergency mode within minutes of the Tefran dreadnought's arrival. Alarms blared through every corridor. Commander Park ordered all non-essential personnel to the evacuation shuttles. The station's small defense grid powered up, but everyone knew it was useless against a warship that size. Hana stood in the cargo bay classroom, watching her students being collected by their frightened parents. The Vrinks adults were torn between their natural aggression and the knowledge that their cubs were in danger. Ambassador Theron arrived and tried to get Crix to leave. "No," Crix said firmly. "I will not abandon Teacher Hana." "This is not your fight," Theron said, his voice tight with worry. "She taught me," Crix replied. "She shared her knowledge freely. That makes it my fight." The other young Vrinks echoed similar sentiments. Their parents looked shocked. Vrinks cubs did not refuse direct orders from adults. They didn't choose loyalty to outsiders over their own pack. But the rules these cubs had learned in Hana's classroom were changing how they thought about everything. Lieutenant Minho burst into the cargo bay. "Hana, the commander wants you in the control room. Now." Hana followed him through corridors filled with running people and blaring alarms. The control room was crowded with officers staring at screens showing the Tefran warship. It hung in space like a dark threat, its weapons systems clearly active. Commander Park looked exhausted. "Rix is giving us 6 hours to hand you over. After that, he fires on the station." "Then give me to them," Hana said immediately. "Don't let everyone die because of me." "Not happening," Park said firmly. "You're under our protection." "With what?" Hana gestured at the screens. "We have mining equipment and a defense grid designed to scare off pirates. That ship could destroy us by accident." Ambassador Han appeared on the communication screen, calling from her ship, which was still days away at maximum speed. "Hana, listen to me carefully. What you've done here matters more than one station. If we surrender you to the Tefran, it sends a message that sharing knowledge is a crime. Every species watching, and they're all watching, will learn that the old ways of controlling information are still the strongest." "We can't let that happen." "But everyone here will die," Hana said. "Maybe not." Han's expression was grim but determined. "I've been making calls. Give us time to work." The next 2 hours were the longest of Hana's life. She sat in the control room, watching the clock count down while Commander Park and his officers tried to come up with impossible defense plans. The evacuation shuttles filled up, but there weren't enough of them. Even if everyone evacuated, the Tefran could easily destroy the fleeing ships. Then something appeared on the sensors. Multiple hyperspace signatures, the sensor officer announced. Coming in fast, everyone tensed. More Tefran ships would end this quickly and badly. But the ships that emerged from hyperspace weren't Tefran. They were Vrinks patrol vessels, sleek and dangerous. 6 of them arranging themselves in a defensive formation around the station. Commander Park stared. "What are they doing?" Ambassador Theron's face appeared on the communication screen. He was aboard the lead Vrinks ship and his expression was fierce. "The human Kim Hana is under Vrinks protection. Any attack on her is an attack on the Vrinks people. We will respond accordingly." Park looked at Han's image on another screen. The ambassador looked as surprised as everyone else. "I didn't arrange this." "I did," said a new voice. On a third screen, an elderly Vrinks appeared. She was larger than Theron, her scales darker with age. The entire control room went quiet. "High Matriarch Vexra," Park said, bowing slightly even though she couldn't see him clearly. "Commander Park," Vexra acknowledged. "I have watched the recordings of what happens in your station. I have watched my people's young learning to work together instead of fighting for dominance. I have seen them excited about knowledge instead of jealous of it. What this human teaches is valuable. The Tefran will not stop it." More hyperspace signatures appeared. Ships from a dozen different species emerged around the system. Silicate colony vessels, independent trader fleets, even some ships from species Hana didn't recognize. They were all arranging themselves in a loose defensive formation. The sensor officer kept calling out new arrivals. "This is insane. There must be 50 ships out there now." Dr. Subin was watching from the corner of the control room, recording everything. "It's not insane. It's historic. This is the first time species have come together to defend an idea rather than a territory." A message came through from one of the trader ships. The captain, a grizzled independent hauler named Jax Corin, spoke in accented standard. "I spent 3 weeks at a human training port last year. They taught me new navigation techniques and didn't charge me a single credit. Said knowledge was meant to be shared. I figure I owe them for that. Similar messages came from other ships. Species who had benefited from human teaching programs. Species who were interested in trying the collaborative approach. Even some who just didn't like the Teflon telling everyone else how to live. Castellan Rix's face appeared again, and now he looked less confident. His single dreadnought was powerful, but not against a fleet of 50 ships from multiple species. He'd come here expecting an easy intimidation. Instead, he faced a coalition. This is illegal interference, Rix declared. This matter is between the Teflon Collective and the human criminal. No crime has been committed, Ambassador Han replied from her ship. Teaching is not illegal under Galactic Council law. She teaches dangerous ideas, Rix insisted. Ideas that destabilize proper social order. You mean she teaches ideas that threaten your control? Theron said bluntly. You fear your lower castes learning that knowledge doesn't have to be hoarded. You fear them realizing they could be more than what your system allows. Rix's face twisted with anger. You dare speak to me this way, Predator? Your kind survives on instinct and violence. We survive on strength, Theron agreed. But we are learning that strength comes in many forms. This human showed us that, and we will protect her for it. The standoff continued for another hour. More ships arrived, swelling the defensive fleet to over 70 vessels. The Teflon dreadnought was still the most powerful single ship present, but it was vastly outnumbered. Finally, Rix made his decision. The Teflon Collective withdraws from this system. But know this, humans. You have made enemies today. We will not forget. The dreadnought turned and jumped to hyperspace. The tension in the control room eased slightly, but Commander Park looked worried rather than relieved. He's right, Park said quietly. We made powerful enemies. We also made powerful friends, Ambassador Han pointed out. She looked at all the ships still holding position around the station. Species that never would have worked together, just formed a coalition to defend a human teacher. That's unprecedented. Hana felt overwhelmed. She'd just wanted to fix a drill. Now she was somehow at the center of galactic politics. She looked at the screen showing all those ships, all those different species who had come to help. I should thank them, she said. You should, Han agreed. But Hana, you need to understand. This isn't over. What you started here is going to spread. Other species will want to try the human approach to teaching and cooperation. The ones who benefit from the old hierarchical systems will fight back. Today was just the first battle. Crix appeared in the doorway of the control room, having somehow evaded his father's attempts to keep him safe. Teacher Hana is okay? He asked anxiously. Hana smiled despite everything. I'm okay, Crix. Good. Because you promised to teach us about quantum computing tomorrow. I have been reading about it and I have many questions. Everyone in the control room stared at the young Vrinx. He was standing in the aftermath of a near war, and his main concern was making sure class would continue. Dr. Subin laughed suddenly. That right there? That is why this matters. He's not thinking about hierarchy or dominance or any of the things his culture spent thousands of years developing. He's thinking about learning, about questions he wants answered. You did that, Hana. Over the next few days, the coalition fleet slowly dispersed, but they left with promises. The Vrinx committed to expanding the exchange program. The Silicates wanted to send observers to learn human teaching methods. 3 independent colonies requested human instructors. Most surprising was a secret message from within Teflon space. It was from a lower caste engineer named Kessa, who had seen the footage of Hana's classes. She wanted to know if humans would accept Teflon students even after what Rix had done. Ambassador Han brought the question to Hana personally. What do you think? Should we accept Teflon students? Hana thought about it. She thought about Rix's threats, about the danger the Teflon system still posed. But she also thought about her classroom, about Drawn learning to work with delicate components despite his large claws, about Crix's joy when solving problems. Yes, she said finally, knowledge should be shared with everyone. Even people from cultures we don't like. Maybe especially them, Han smiled. That's the most human answer possible. The station slowly returned to normal operations. Hana went back to her classes, now with even more students. The cargo bay wasn't big enough anymore, so they converted an entire wing of the station into proper classrooms and workshops. Hana still missed the simplicity of just fixing machines. The next morning, Hana woke up to find her face on every screen in the station. Video clips of her working with Crix had spread through the galactic network overnight. She wasn't just station famous anymore. She was galaxy famous, and she hated every second of it. Commander Park summoned her to his office before breakfast. When she arrived, she found the room crowded with people she'd never met. Military officers, diplomats, scientists, all of them talking at once about treaties and cultural exchange and opportunities. Hana stood near the door and wished she was back in the maintenance bay where things made sense. Dr. Subin saw her and waved her over. "The footage I recorded has been viewed 2 billion times," she said excitedly. 2 billion, Hana, across 17 different species. Everyone wants to know about the human who taught a Vrinx cub. "I just fixed a drill," Hana said for what felt like the 100th time. "You did more than that." The voice came from a woman Hana didn't recognize. She was older, maybe 50, with sharp eyes and the kind of posture that said military background. "I'm Ambassador Han Suji. I represent humanity at the Galactic Council." Hana felt her stomach drop. The Galactic Council, the most important political body in known space, and their human representative was here, on this tiny mining station, because Hana had let an alien kid help her with tools. "Ambassador," Hana said weakly. "I didn't mean to cause problems." "Problems?" Han smiled. "You've given us the biggest opportunity humanity has had in a century. Do you know what every other species in the galaxy thinks about us?" Hana shook her head. "They think we're weak," Han continued. "We're not the strongest fighters. We don't have the best technology. We're not even particularly smart compared to some species, but what you showed yesterday is something no other species has. You shared your knowledge freely. You taught without demanding anything in return. That's uniquely human." Commander Park cleared his throat. "The Vrinx delegation is requesting a meeting. They want to discuss what happened in the maintenance bay." "Let them in," Han said. Ambassador Theron entered with 4 other adult Vrinx. They filled the room with their presence, making the space feel suddenly small and dangerous. Crix wasn't with them, and Hana felt oddly disappointed. Theron's 3 eyes found Hana immediately. "Engineer Kim, I have spoken with the High Matriarch on our homeworld. She watched the recordings of you teaching my son. She has questions." "Okay," Hana said, because what else could she say? One of the other Vrinx spoke. The translator identified her as Vrinx. "In our culture, knowledge is power. We guard what we know because sharing it makes us weaker. But you shared your knowledge with Crix freely. Why?" Hana thought about how to explain something that seemed obvious to her. "Because teaching him didn't make me weaker. It made the job easier, and now he knows something he didn't know before. That's good for him. But he could use that knowledge against you," another Vrinx said. "He could repair things better than you. Replace you. Maybe," Hana admitted, "but probably not. I've been doing this for 15 years, and even if he did get better than me, that would be good. It would mean I'm a good teacher." That's something to be proud of. The Vrinx exchanged looks. Their body language was hard for Hana to read, but she got the sense they were confused. Really confused. Like she was speaking a language they'd never heard before. Dr. Subin stepped forward. She'd been quiet until now, but Hana could see she was excited to contribute. "If I may explain, humans evolved as cooperative hunters and gatherers. We survived not by being the strongest or fastest, but by working together. Sharing knowledge is built into our nature. We teach our young everything we know because that makes our entire group stronger. Most species don't work that way," Ambassador Han added. "The Vrinx have pack hierarchies based on individual strength. The Tefrin have castes where knowledge is controlled by the ruling class. The Silicates share everything, but they're a hive mind, so it's automatic. Humans are the only major species that chooses to teach freely across our entire population." Theron was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised everyone. "Crix has not stopped talking about repairing the drill. He asks questions constantly. How this works, why that connects to this. What would happen if we change this component? I have never seen him so engaged with anything." One of the other Vrinx made a sound that might have been agreement. "My daughter saw the footage. She asked why Vrinx don't teach like humans do. I had no answer." "The High Matriarch is receiving similar questions from across our worlds," Theron continued, "especially from the young. They see Crix learning without fear of punishment for mistakes, and they want the same thing." Ambassador Han leaned forward. "What if we formalize this? A cultural exchange program. Young Vrinx could come to human stations to learn, not as diplomats or soldiers, but as students. We would teach them freely, the way we teach our own young. In exchange for what? Theron asked. The predatory suspicion was back in his voice. What do humans gain? The same thing, Han said simply. Our young could learn from yours. You could teach us about Vrink's engineering, which is more advanced than ours in many ways. We could teach you our approaches to problem solving and cooperation. Both species become stronger. The Vrinks talked among themselves in their own language, too fast for the translator to keep up. Hana watched them, trying to gauge their reactions. It was hard to tell what they were thinking. Finally, Theron turned back to the humans. This would be unprecedented. No species in the Galactic Council has ever shared knowledge so freely. Many will oppose it. I know, Han said, but it's worth trying. The High Matriarch is willing to approve a trial program, Theron said slowly. But she has conditions. The program would start here on this station. Engineer Kim would be the primary instructor for the first group of Vrink students. Every human in the room turned to look at Hana. She felt her face go red. Me? I'm not a teacher. I just fix things. You taught Crix, Theron said. He trusts you. That matters. I have a job, Hana protested. I can't just stop fixing drills to run some teaching program. Dr. Subin laughed. Hana, you're going to be doing this whether you like it or not. The galaxy is watching. You've become a symbol. I don't want to be a symbol. I want to fix machines in peace. Commander Park gave her a sympathetic look. Sorry, Hana, that option is gone now. But we'll support you however we can. The meeting continued for another hour. Plans were made. Schedules were drafted. The first group of young Vrinks would arrive in 2 weeks. 6 cubs, including Crix, would spend 3 months on the station learning from human instructors. Hana felt like she was being swept along by a current she couldn't fight. But there was something else too. When she thought about Crix's excitement when the drill started working, about the joy in his roar, she felt a small spark of pride. Maybe teaching wasn't so bad. After the meeting ended, Hana tried to escape back to the maintenance bay. She needed to work with her hands to do something that made sense, but she only made it halfway there before she found Crix waiting in the corridor. The young Vrinks was alone, which was unusual. He chirped when he saw her and held up a small device. Hana recognized it as a personal translator, more advanced than the station's standard models. I asked Father for my own translator, Crix said, his words coming through clear and direct, so I can talk to you without the station computer. I have questions about the hydraulic system, and about the electrical circuits, and about how you knew which bolt to loosen first. Hana looked at his eager face, at the way all 3 eyes focused on her with complete attention. She thought about saying no, about insisting she was too busy, but she didn't. Okay, she said. But I need to do a maintenance check on the coolant system first. You can help if you want. Crix's whole body seemed to vibrate with excitement. Yes, I want to help. They walked to the maintenance bay together, human and Vrinks, while the galaxy watched and wondered what would come next. Behind them, in Commander Park's office, Ambassador Han and Dr. Subin reviewed the footage from the morning's meeting. Do you think this will work? Subin asked. Han considered the question carefully. I think we're about to find out if humanity's greatest strength is really sharing what we know. And I think a lot of very powerful people in the galaxy are going to fight us on this. Why? Because if we succeed, if we prove that cooperation and free exchange of knowledge produces better results than hierarchies and controlled information, it threatens the foundation of how half the galaxy operates. Species that maintain power through limiting knowledge won't take that well. You think they'll try to stop us? Han nodded slowly. I think they already are. In the Tefran Collective's territory, thousands of light years away, Castellan Rix watched the footage of Hana teaching Crix. His face was unreadable, but his claws drummed against his desk in an angry rhythm. This human threatens everything, he said to his advisors. If the idea spreads that knowledge should be shared freely, our entire caste system collapses. The lower castes will demand education. They will demand equality. What do you propose? One of his advisors asked. Rix's claws stopped drumming. We stop this before it spreads further. Whatever it takes. The first official teaching session started poorly. 6 young Vrinks arrived on the station with their parents, and immediately the cultural differences became obvious. The cubs kept trying to establish dominance over each other, snapping and growling whenever one picked up a tool before another. Their parents watched with approval, like this was normal and good. Hana stood in the middle of the converted cargo bay that was now her classroom and wondered what she'd gotten herself into. The space was large enough for the Vrinks, filled with broken machines and equipment she'd gathered for teaching. But the cubs were more interested in fighting than learning. Crix was the only one staying calm. He sat near Hana, holding a wrench carefully, waiting for instructions. The other cubs noticed this and clearly thought less of him for it. "Okay," Hana said loudly. Everyone stopped. The cubs ignored her. Two of them were locked in a wrestling match, their claws scratching gouges in the metal floor. Their parents made encouraging sounds. Hana looked at Ambassador Theron, who was observing along with the other parents. "This isn't going to work if they fight each other." "They are establishing hierarchy," Theron explained. "It is natural." "Not in my classroom," Hana said firmly. She walked over to the fighting cubs and stood between them. They both stopped, startled by her boldness. "If you want to learn from me, you follow my rules. Rule 1, no fighting. Rule 2, we help each other. Rule 3, mistakes are okay." One of the cubs, a female named Shira, growled at her. "You are prey. You do not make rules for Vrinks." Hana didn't back down. She'd dealt with aggressive machinery that could kill her. A young alien with an attitude problem wasn't that different. "You're right. I'm not Vrinks, but I know how to fix these machines and you don't. So if you want to learn, you follow my rules. If you don't want to learn, you can leave." Shira looked at her parents. They seemed uncertain, caught between their cultural instincts and the promise they'd made to try this human approach. Crick stood up and moved next to Hana. "I learned by following her rules. I can fix a hydraulic system now." "Can you?" The challenge in his voice was obvious. Shira's ears flattened. The other cubs watched carefully. This was the kind of hierarchy establishment they understood. "Fine," Shira said eventually. "I will try your rules, human." The other cubs agreed one by one. Hana could tell they didn't like it, but they were curious enough to give it a chance. "Good," Hana said. "Now everyone pick a partner. Not someone you like or someone who's stronger than you. Just pick someone standing near you." This confused them. Vrinks didn't partner based on proximity. They partnered based on pack position. But slowly, awkwardly, they formed pairs. "Today we're learning about magnetic containment systems," Hana explained. She pointed to a broken plasma cutter on the workbench. "These systems keep dangerous energy controlled. If they fail, people die, so we're going to learn how to repair them safely." She spent the next hour teaching the basics, how the magnetic coils worked, what each component did, how to test for failures without getting hurt. The cubs learned at different speeds. Crix was fastest, but Shira wasn't far behind. A male cub named Dron struggled with the delicate work, his claws too big for some of the smaller components. When Dron accidentally broke a connector, he immediately went rigid, waiting for punishment. Hana saw his partners back away, leaving him to face consequences alone. "It's okay," Hana said calmly. She picked up the broken piece. "This happens. Look, I'll show you how to work with smaller parts when you have large hands." She demonstrated a technique using specialized grips. Dron watched carefully, his three eyes wide with surprise. When he tried again using her method, he succeeded. "Good," Hana said, and she meant it. "See? Mistakes are how we learn what doesn't work." The other cubs were watching this interaction with confusion. So were their parents. In Vrinks culture, repeated failure meant you were weak and should accept a lower position. But Hana was treating Dron's mistake as just another part of learning. By the end of the session, they'd repaired 3 plasma cutters and 1 welding unit. The cubs were tired but excited. Even Shira seemed less hostile. "Tomorrow we'll work on power distribution systems," Hana announced. "Same time? Don't be late." As the Vrinks families left, Crix lingered behind. "You handled Shira well. She respects strength and you showed it." "I wasn't trying to show strength," Hana said. "I was just setting boundaries." "To us that is the same thing," Crix said. He paused, then added, "But your way is different. You showed strength without violence. That is new." After he left, Dr. Subin emerged from her observation post. She'd been recording everything, of course. "That was remarkable. You just taught 6 apex predator cubs to cooperate. Do you know how significant that is?" "I taught them to fix machines," Hana corrected. "No, you taught them a completely different way of thinking about knowledge and cooperation." Subin pulled up her recordings on a tablet. "Look at this moment when Dron broke the connector. Watch the other cubs' reactions." Hana watched. She saw them step away from Dron, saw them wait for him to be punished or driven out. Then she saw their confusion when she helped him instead. They're learning that mistakes don't mean exclusion, Subin explained, that helping someone who's struggling doesn't make you weak. These are revolutionary concepts for them. It's just basic teaching, Hana protested. Basic human teaching, Subin corrected, which is unique in the galaxy. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern repeated. Each day, the cubs learned new skills. Each day, they got a little better at cooperating instead of competing. They still had their Vrinx instincts, still occasionally snapped at each other, but Hana's rules held. The breakthrough came during a lesson on fusion reactor maintenance. Hana had set up a complex problem that required teamwork to solve safely. One cub needed to stabilize the magnetic field while another replaced a damaged coil, while a third monitored the energy output. At first, the cubs tried to do it individually. Each one wanted to prove they could handle it alone. But the task was designed to be impossible for one person. After 3 failed attempts, Shira finally said something that surprised everyone. "We need to work together." The other cubs stared at her. Working together meant admitting you couldn't do something alone. It meant showing weakness, but Crix immediately moved to take the stabilization position. "I will handle the field. Shira, you have the steadiest claws. You should replace the coil. Dron can monitor the output." They tried it as a team. It worked perfectly. When the reactor hummed to life safely, all 3 cubs made sounds of triumph. But this time it wasn't individual roaring. It was harmonized, celebrating together. Their parents watched with expressions that might have been wonder. Ambassador Theron approached Hana afterward. "My son just admitted he could not do something alone," he said quietly. "In our culture, that is shameful." But he looked proud when he said it. "Because he solved the problem," Hana explained. "That's what matters. Not whether he did it alone." "This is difficult for us to understand," Theron admitted. "But I see the results. The cubs are learning faster than any young Vrinx I have known. They are excited to return each day, and they are beginning to think in ways we never have." News of the program's success spread quickly. Ambassador Han reported back to Earth and to the Galactic Council. Requests came in from other species who wanted to send their young to learn from humans. The silicates were interested. Some independent colonies wanted in. Even a few brave Tefran from the lower castes secretly applied, but not everyone was happy. Commander Park received a formal complaint from the Tefran Collective. They called the teaching program cultural contamination and demanded it be stopped immediately. "They're scared," Ambassador Han said when she reviewed the complaint. "Their entire power structure is based on controlling who has access to knowledge. If their lower castes see that knowledge can be shared freely, the whole system becomes unstable." "What can they do about it?" Park asked. "That's what worries me," Han admitted. 3 days later, they got their answer. A massive Tefran warship appeared at the edge of the system. It was a dreadnought-class vessel, capable of destroying the entire station with a single volley. The warship broadcast a message. Castellan Rix's face appeared on every screen in the station, his expression cold and angry. "The human known as Kim Hana has committed crimes against the natural order of the galaxy," he announced. "She has spread dangerous ideas that threaten stable civilizations. She must be surrendered to Tefran justice immediately, or we will be forced to take action." In the converted cargo bay, Hana was in the middle of teaching a lesson on coolant systems. The broadcast interrupted her, and suddenly 6 young Vrinx and 1 human engineer were staring at a threat of war. Crix stood up, his body tense. "You cannot have Teacher Hana," he said to the screen, even though Rix couldn't hear him. "She has done nothing wrong." Shira stood too, followed by the other cubs. They formed a protective circle around Hana, their claws extended, their teeth bared. Hana looked at her students. These young predators who had learned to work together, who had learned that teaching and helping made everyone stronger. They were ready to fight for her. She felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you," she said quietly. "But let's hope it doesn't come to that." The silence in the maintenance bay felt like it might shatter into violence at any second. Hana kept her hands visible and her movements slow. The adult Vrinx stood in the doorway, its massive body blocking most of the light from the corridor. Behind it, Commander Park Jinho looked like he might pass out. The cub chirped again and held up the wrench higher like it was showing off a prize. The adult Vrinx made a sound that was half growl, half question. Its 3 eyes moved between Hana and the cub, trying to understand what it was seeing. Hana's mind raced. She needed to do something, Say something before the gun started firing or the claws started tearing. She looked at the cub, then at the adult, and made a decision that was either very brave or very stupid. She bowed, not deeply but enough to show respect. Then she spoke in standard Galactic, the trade language everyone learned. Your child was helping me repair my equipment. Thank you for raising someone so helpful. The translation device on Commander Park's belt crackled as it converted her words. The adult Vrinx's head jerked back slightly, like the words had physically surprised it. It looked at the cub again, then at the partially disassembled drill, then back at Hana. Slowly, very slowly, the tension in its body eased. It spoke, and the translator turned its words into something Hana could understand. Crix helped you? With your broken machine? Yes, Hana said. She gestured to the tools scattered around them. He handed me the tools I needed. He learned quickly which ones were correct. The adult Vrinx, who Hana now realized must be Ambassador Theron from the diplomatic delegation, stared at his son. The cub Crix made an excited chittering sound and pointed at the drill's hydraulic panel. He launched into rapid speech that the translator struggled to keep up with. Father, I watched, I learned the patterns, the human showed me which metal pieces connect. I held the turning tool. I gave her the cutting tool when she needed it. The machine was broken, but now it works better. Can I help more? Theron stood completely still. In Vrinx culture, as Hana vaguely remembered from her training briefings, status came from strength and knowledge. You didn't share knowledge freely. You used it to maintain your position in the pack. The idea of teaching someone, especially someone who might challenge your authority later, was unthinkable. But here was his son, excited about learning from a human, a species the Vrinx considered weak, prey animals who survived through luck and stubbornness rather than proper strength. Commander Park finally found his voice. Ambassador Theron, we apologize profusely. We were searching everywhere for Crix. We had no idea he had wandered down to the maintenance levels. Engineer Kim had no part in his disappearance. Theron's gaze shifted to Park, and the commander took an involuntary step backward. When a Vrinx looked at you like that, some ancient part of your brain screamed that you were about to become dinner. My son was not taken, Theron said slowly. He wandered, as he often does. The last part sounded tired, like this was not the first time Crix had caused problems by being curious. Lieutenant Minho and his security team still had their weapons ready, though they'd lowered them slightly. The tension in the room was still thick enough to cut with a knife. One wrong move and this entire situation could explode into the kind of incident that started wars. Hana looked at Crix. The cub was watching her with all three eyes, waiting for something. She realized he wanted to keep helping. The repair wasn't finished yet, and in his mind, they were in the middle of a job. She made another decision that was probably stupid. The drill isn't fixed yet, she said to Theron. I still need about 6 more hours of work. If it's acceptable to you, Crix could stay and continue helping. Under supervision, of course. Every human in the room looked at her like she'd suggested juggling live grenades. Commander Park's face went from pale to red. Minho actually whispered, "What are you doing?" under his breath. But Theron didn't attack. He didn't roar or threaten. Instead, he tilted his head in that same curious way Crix had done earlier. You want my son to continue helping you? He's good at it, Hana said simply. And I could use an extra pair of hands. Or, several extra hands? She gestured at Crix's 6 limbs. Theron was silent for a long moment. Hana could see him thinking, processing this strange situation. Behind him, other members of the Vrinx delegation were gathering in the corridor, drawn by the commotion. Humans were arriving too. The maintenance bay was starting to feel very crowded. Why? Theron finally asked. Why would you teach him? What do you gain? Hana thought about that. She thought about her little brother Doyen back on Earth, who used to follow her around their father's repair shop. She thought about all the people who had taught her things over the years, sharing their knowledge freely because that's what humans did. I gain help fixing my drill, she said, and he gains knowledge about how machines work. Both of us benefit. That's how humans teach. We share what we know because it makes everyone stronger. The translator struggled with some of her words. The concept didn't translate well into Vrinx language. Teaching wasn't about sharing in their culture. It was about control. But Crix understood. He moved closer to Hana and made an eager chirping sound. He still held the wrench, and he clearly wanted to use it. Theron looked at his son. Really looked at him. Hana saw something shift in the ambassador's expression. It wasn't quite understanding, but maybe it was the beginning of curiosity. 6 hours, Theron said finally. I will stay and observe. If anything happens to Crix, the treaty negotiations end immediately. Commander Park looked like he wanted to argue, but Hana spoke first. That's fair. He'll be safe, I promise. Minho and his security team were ordered to stay too, along with half the Vrinks delegation. Someone brought in chairs, though the Vrinks didn't use them. They stood or sat on their haunches, watching every move Hana and Crix made. Dr. Lee Subin arrived 20 minutes later, out of breath and carrying an armload of recording equipment. She was the station's xenoanthropologist, and she looked at the scene in the maintenance bay like someone had just handed her every birthday present she'd ever wanted. Don't mind me, Subin said as she set up cameras. This is potentially the most significant cross-species interaction in modern history. Please continue. Hana wanted to point out that she was just trying to fix a drill, not make history. But Subin was already recording, and Theron was watching with all 3 eyes. And Crix was holding out a socket wrench, hopefully, so Hana took the wrench and got back to work. The next 6 hours were the strangest of her life. Crix learned fast. After Hana showed him something once, he remembered it. When she needed to remove a series of bolts, she demonstrated on the first one. Crix did the next 5 by himself, adjusting his strength after he accidentally crushed the first one. When he made a mistake, Hana didn't yell or punish him. She just showed him the correct way. This seemed to confuse Crix at first. In his experience, mistakes meant challenges for status, but Hana just smiled and said, "Try again," and eventually he understood. They worked together, human and Vrinks, while 2 species watched and tried to understand what they were witnessing. Hana explained what she was doing as she worked, and Crix listened. Sometimes he asked questions, filtered through the translator, and Hana answered them as simply as she could. When the drill's hydraulic system finally rumbled back to life, Crix released a roar of triumph. It was so loud that every human in the room jumped. But it wasn't a threatening sound. It was pure joy. Hana found herself grinning. "Good work," she said, and held up her hand. Crix looked at her hand confused. Hana demonstrated by gently tapping her hand against one of his claws. "It's called a high five. Humans do it when they accomplish something together." Crix carefully tapped her hand back, his claw making a soft clicking sound against her palm. Ambassador Theron stood up slowly. His expression was unreadable. He spoke in his own language, and the translator converted it. "I need to report this to the matriarch immediately." He left without another word, followed by most of the delegation. But Crix stayed, looking between his father's retreating back and the now functioning drill. "You did good," Hana told him. "Really good." Crix chirped softly and set down the wrench. Then he left too, following his father. The maintenance bay felt very empty suddenly. Dr. Subin was still there, reviewing her recordings with an expression of wonder. Commander Park was there too, looking exhausted. "Hana," Park said quietly, "do you have any idea what you just did?" Hana looked at the drill, now humming with power. "Fixed the hydraulics?" "No," Subin said, looking up from her recordings. "You might have just changed everything." The maintenance bay smelled like oil and hot metal. Kim Hana wiped sweat from her forehead and stared at the broken drill in front of her. The massive machine was silent now, its hydraulic arms frozen in place like a dead insect. She had 3 days to fix it. 3 days before the mining quota was due. 3 days before her boss started asking questions she didn't want to answer. Hana grabbed her toolkit and knelt beside the drill's main panel. The metal was hot enough to burn, but she'd worked in worse conditions. Growing up in the industrial zones of Earth taught her that machines didn't care about comfort. They just needed someone stubborn enough to fix them. She pried open the hydraulic panel with a crowbar. Inside, a mess of cables and tubes greeted her. One of the main pressure lines had burst, spraying fluid everywhere. The backup valve had failed too. Of course it had. Nothing on this station ever broke in a simple way. Hana muttered a curse in Korean and reached for her wrench. Her fingers touched empty air. She looked down. The wrench had rolled away, just out of reach near her toolbox. She sighed and started to stretch for it. A shadow fell across the floor. Hana froze. The maintenance bay was supposed to be empty. Everyone else was either in the cafeteria or working in the mines. She turned her head slowly, her hand moving toward the plasma cutter on her belt. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was better than nothing. The creature standing in the doorway was huge, at least 8 feet tall, covered in dark scales that reflected the bay's harsh lights. 6 limbs, each ending in claws that could tear through metal. 3 eyes, golden and unblinking, set in a head that looked like something from Earth's ancient nightmares. A Vrinx. Hana's heart hammered in her chest. The Vrinx were predators. Everyone in the galaxy knew that. They hunted in packs on their homeworld, taking down prey 3 times their size. Their military was legendary. Their diplomats were feared. And now one of them was standing between her and the only exit. But something was wrong. The Vrinx wasn't moving like a hunter. It was standing still, its head tilted to one side. One of its 3 eyes blinked slowly. Then it made a sound. A soft chirping noise that seemed completely at odds with its terrifying appearance. Hana's mind raced. The Vrinx delegation was visiting the station for treaty talks. She'd heard about it from Commander Park Jinho at the morning briefing. Important diplomatic stuff. The kind of thing that happened floors above the maintenance bay, in clean rooms with comfortable chairs and translators. So what was a Vrinx doing down here? The creature took a step forward. Hana tensed, ready to run or fight or do something desperate. But the Vrinx didn't attack. Instead, it looked at the floor near Hana's toolbox. Its head tilted again and it made another chirping sound. Then it bent down and picked up the wrench. Hana stared. The Vrinx held the tool carefully, its massive claws barely touching the metal. It looked at the wrench, then at Hana, then back at the wrench. Slowly, like it was afraid of startling her, the creature extended one arm and held the wrench out to her. For a moment, Hana couldn't move. Her brain refused to process what was happening. Vrinx didn't help people. They challenged them, dominated them, or ate them. Those were the 3 options everyone knew about. Helping wasn't on the list, but the wrench was right there, gleaming in the Vrinx's clawed hand. Hana took a breath. Then another. Her training kicked in. Assess the situation. Don't make assumptions. React to what's actually happening, not what you think should happen. What was actually happening was that a very large, very dangerous alien was trying to hand her a tool. Slowly, Hana reached out and took the wrench. The metal was warm from the Vrinx's body heat. She pulled it back and held it against her chest, waiting for something bad to happen. Nothing did. The Vrinx made a pleased sound, a low rumbling that vibrated through the floor. It sat down on its haunches, all 6 limbs folding under it in a way that made it look slightly less terrifying. Then it just watched her, those 3 golden eyes fixed on her face. Hana swallowed hard. She looked at the broken drill, then at the Vrinx, then back at the drill. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was probably going to get her fired or killed or both. But the drill wasn't going to fix itself. She turned back to the hydraulic panel and got to work. The wrench fit perfectly on the first bolt. She loosened it slowly, keeping one eye on the Vrinx. The creature didn't move. It just watched, its head following her movements like a curious child. No, not a child. A cub. The more Hana looked at it, the more she noticed the signs. The Vrinx wasn't fully grown. Its scales were slightly duller than the ones she'd seen in training videos. Its movements had an awkward quality, like it was still learning how its body worked. This was a young Vrinx, probably the child of one of the diplomats upstairs, which meant someone was probably looking for it right now, which meant Hana was going to have a lot of explaining to do very soon. She pushed the thought away and focused on the drill. The burst pressure line needed to be replaced. She set down the wrench and reached for her cutting tool. Before her fingers touched it, the Vrinx moved. One clawed hand picked up the cutter and held it out to her. Hana took it without thinking. The Vrinx made that pleased rumbling sound again. They worked like that for the next 20 minutes. Hana would reach for a tool and the Vrinx would hand it to her. Sometimes it got the wrong one, and Hana would gently push it aside and grab what she actually needed. The Vrinx would watch closely and next time it would pick the right tool. It was like having an assistant. A very large, very scaly assistant who could probably kill her by accident if it sneezed wrong, but an assistant nonetheless. Hana was so focused on the work that she didn't hear the footsteps until they were right outside the bay. She looked up just as Lieutenant Choi Minho burst through the door, followed by 3 security officers with weapons drawn. They all froze when they saw her kneeling next to the drill, covered in hydraulic fluid, with a Vrinx cub calmly handing her a socket wrench. Minho's weapon trembled in his hands. His voice came out strangled. Hana, what the hell is going on? The Vrinx cub looked at the security team. It made a low growling sound, not quite threatening, but definitely not friendly. Then it moved slightly, positioning itself between Hana and the armed humans. Hana realized with a shock that the cub was trying to protect her. She slowly stood up, her hands raised. "It's okay," she said quietly. "Nobody move. Nobody shoot. It's just helping me fix the drill." Minho looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. But before anyone could say anything else, a roar echoed through the corridor outside the bay. It was deep and primal and full of rage. The cub's ears flattened against its head. An adult Vrinx appeared in the doorway, twice the size of the cub. Its scales were darker, almost black, and its eyes blazed with fury. Behind it stood Commander Park Jinho, looking pale and terrified. The adult Vrinx's gaze swept the room, taking in the armed humans, the cub, and Hana standing between them. Its lips pulled back, revealing teeth designed for tearing flesh. Then it saw the wrench in the cub's hand and the half-repaired drill behind them. The roar died in its throat, replaced by a confused, almost human-sounding question in a language Hana didn't understand. The cub chirped back, holding up the wrench proudly. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The fate of human-Vrinx relations balanced on the edge of a blade in a maintenance bay that smelled like oil, and fear, and possibility.